My quick tips this week are actually about is writing for kids, and it's about how to write funny stories. Because as we know, if there's one thing that kids love to read, particularly as sort of like grade 3, grade 4, grade 5, those sort of age groups, is funny stories. And learning to write your own funny story is a joy. And I actually say this with some kind of lived experience, because a couple of years ago,
I remember
do you
this.
remember this? A couple of
Yeah, I
years
do.
ago, I was invited by Adrian Beck, who writes funny stories, and Sally Rippon, who also writes funny stories, to submit a story for an anthology. So it was the second Total Quack Up, which is it's an anthology that they create in support of Dimmick's children's charities. And this one was Total Quack Up again, so it was the second one. So Adrian contacted me and he said to me, I'd really like you to write a funny story for this anthology. And I was like, um, you know what? I'd really love to, but I don't know if I can. I've never written a funny story. He goes,
And I
you're right.
remember your children the boys were a bit like, don't think you can do
No,
that.
I said to the boys, I've got to write a funny story, and they went, "Oh, good luck with that," because I don't. I love stories with humor, and all of my books have humor, but an actual sit down to write a funny story experience, like not what I'd never done it. So I sat down and I wrote this story, and then I gave it to the boys, and I'm like, "Do you reckon this is funny?" And they both read it and they went, actually, you know what? It's okay. And I thought, well, that's high praise. It's
That is high
probably
praise.
it's probably hilarious. And so I sent it off to Adrian and said, yes, I will be in your anthology. And so that was fun. But anyway, you should totally have a look at that. If you'd like to see my attempt at a funny story, go nuts. Total quack up again. But I also asked Adrian to write a post for me for my blog, which was about is for kids on how to write funny stories. Um, I should have actually got him to do it before I tried to write my own, but anyway,
You
that's
should
that's what we
have.
do. So I'm going to put the link in the show notes, but you'll also find it on my blog at allisontait.com. It's just called how to, for writing for kids, how to write funny stories. So it's actually a really funny post. It's called "How to Write Funny Stories and Dominate at Life," because that's pretty much how Adrian runs his life. Now, his number one tip for writing funny stories is to reveal your deepest, darkest secrets and use them in your stories. And as you said, the thing about writing is that you can pretend that you just made it all up when secretly it's based on reality. So his tip is to think of the most embarrassing things that have ever happened to you. Remember how they made you feel, the truth, all of the horror, and then exaggerate. So make it even worse, make the whole situation even more embarrassing, and that's going to give you a fantastic, idea for your story. He said, "Don't be too cool for school. You have to
Mm.
basically um, he's like, funny stories don't get the praise that other stories get. Abandon all ambitions to win prizes. You'll never be seen as a literary genius, but that's okay because that means you can loosen up." So he says, embrace sound effects. Like, I think that's the whole thing with any kind of writing, but particularly with this kind of writing, is you have to be brave enough to just put it on the page, even if you think it's ridiculous and absolutely embarrassing, put it on the page, because if you put it on the page, chances are, and if you put it on the page with abandon, like no restraint, don't be, if you hold back, people will be able to tell and it won't be as good. Um, then he says, the last tip that I'm going to share here, there's actually 10 in this, but the last tip I'm going to share is to trust your first reaction. Like, once you've read something over and over again, you can begin to forget that it's funny. And you start
Mm.
questioning yourself. Is this joke actually funny? Am I really funny? They're not helpful. You have to basically, like, if you thought it was funny when you first wrote it down, then it's funny. You have to accept that you're funny and go with that. I remember I went to a screening of a Ben Elton movie one night, and there was a Q&A thing at the end of it. And we were asking questions, and I had to ask a question because I can't help myself, right? That's what I do. So I put my hand up and I said to him, "Do you know it's funny when you're writing it? Like, do
Right.
you know it's funny? Or do you have to wait to see if the audience laughs to know it's funny? And he said, if I waited for the audience, I'd be waiting 2 years because that's how long movies take to be made. He said, you have to have an idea that it's funny when you put it on the page. And if you're laughing, chances are someone else will laugh as well. So those are my tips.